This video is all about the cartilage in your joints and your vertebral discs, and of course about how to get through life without arthrosis or slipped discs. I'm going to tell you about the physiological connections you and most people probably never have heard of before. The beauty of it is that learning about it will put your mind at ease and take away the fear, and you'll have the chance of having healthy discs and cartilage for the rest of your days. For you to understand this concept better, I'll first need to explain how discs and cartilage are nourished, how this works. Because both the articular cartilage you find in all your joints, small and big, and the vertebral discs, cartilage that sits like shock absorbers between the vertebral bodies, are not supplied with blood. That means the nutrients they need to regenerate themselves, to grow, to adapt to various loads. These nutrients are not supplied through blood. They have to find some other way. The question is, how do the nutrients reach the cartilage in the joints? That's very simple. Just picture a sponge. When you have a sponge soaked with dirty water and you squeeze it, the dirty water is pushed out. If you let go again and the sponge is in clean water, it's going to soak up that water. So what is happening here exactly? Depending on the joint, movements either put pressure on or take pressure off of certain sections of the cartilage. It is a permanent change of these two states. The more you use your joints across their entire range of motion, using all available angles, the more the cartilage surface is subject to these stimuli and nourished. Let me help you visualize it. Your elbow joint has to be bent fully and extended fully. Your shoulder joint has to run the entire range of motion, all the way back, all the way up, to the side, and across, and also be rotated inwards and outwards. It's the same for your hip joint. It has to be lifted up all the way forward. Your leg has to swing backwards, to the side, to the inside, and also rotate inwards and outwards. You have to overextend your wrists and bend them forward. Your foot has to be bent backwards and stretched forward. The same goes for the small joints as well. What Mother Nature purposefully designed for your joints as a possible range of motion has to be fully used. That is important so that pressure is put on and taken off of your cartilage across its entire surface so that nutrients can be supplied. Now, our spine. Between each vertebral body, you'll find a disc, starting from your lumbar spine to your thoracic spine, ending with your cervical spine. And here, the same principle applies. Your head has to be bent forward all the way, go back all the way, go to the left, to the right. You have to rotate your head. And don't forget the angles in between. Forward and to the side, and then in between. And the opposite side as well. And if all of this is happening in all three dimensions, so to speak, then your discs will be nourished enough through pressure being put on and taken off. There's a special trick for your spine. If you rotate your upper body, the discs are under pressure across their entire surface. And when you move back into your starting position, pressure will be taken off those entire surfaces. So, if you want to make sure that your discs are well nourished, then occasionally rotate your upper body all the way to the left, then to the right, then the flow of nutrients is secured. Now I guess it is dawning on you what usually goes wrong here, because if you realize how often you actually use these angles of motion, you'll have this sinking feeling because I'm not actually doing it. And sadly, that's true. In our modern lives, the way we move around every day, we rarely use every angle because who really rotates their body every day, arches their back like this, and so on? We just don't do it often enough. We've estimated that if you look at all the joints combined, plus the spine, and you say all these joints, with all the various angles they could move in, represent 100% of all possible movements. Then this, of course, equals 100% of possible opportunities to nourish your cartilage and vertebral discs. If you don't use 100% of all these possible movements, but only 10%, which is a sad reality in our world, math will tell you, and you could do that in your head, that the nourishment of your cartilage drops 5 to 10%. Whether or not this mathematical model maps the reality still needs some more research, but one thing is obvious: the nourishment of your vertebral discs and cartilage is dramatically lower than it should be. And then, another thing comes on top of this lack of nourishment: the tension around the joints, but also around the discs, are mounting. That means, if you take your spine, for example, there's force pulling downward in the front, also in the back, and that leads to a permanent pressure situation for your spine. And that means that even in a neutral position, like standing, for example, pressure is not taken off of the discs, so that pressure can be put on again when you move. No, the discs flatten more and more under this permanent pressure, even when you lie down. A situation that's supposed to take pressure off of your discs due to mounting muscle and fascia tension, the discs contract more and more, and that leads to the slow death of your discs. Not only that this on-off pressure mechanism comes to a halt, but the underlying load present at all times is mounting. And that's why the discs are getting pressed together even more, deprived of nourishment, and at some point have shrunken or disappeared for good. We all know the classic situation for throwing your back out. So typical. You want to lift a box out of your trunk, swing around, and snap. Some people even tell you they hear a popping sound. All that should never happen because the box alone could not do that kind of damage, this kind of dramatic overload. It is simply something that comes on top of the underlying tension, is added to it, and that is ruining your discs. And what that means is that the neglecting of all the possible angles of motion is not only responsible for the lack of nourishment of the discs, but also for the mounting tensions and the ensuing slow and sudden death of your discs. It is the mathematical outcome of these developments. And as if that wasn't enough, something else also factors into this: our diet. The food many of us eat is responsible for an increase in acidity of our tissues and the fluids in our bodies. And this acidosis is disastrous for our cartilage and vertebrae, which consist of connective tissue. Our connective tissue works perfectly if it is supplied with sufficient water. It keeps the tissues flexible, they can yield, it makes them indestructible. However, the moment the tissue fluids are overly acidic, the fascia lose their capacity to bind water, and that means they are actually drying out, making them susceptible to tears and less stress resistant. And at the same time, your body has to somehow handle these acidified intercellular fluids somehow. And so the moment the degree of acidity in your tissues is too high, the acid crystallizes out to lower the acid level of the fluids. Where do these crystals show up? In places where they presumably don't get in the way, in more or less neglected joint areas, that is, in your cartilage. A couple of years ago, I had an anatomist in my class, and when I started to explain the situation, he told me, "Roland, that's exactly what I see when I look at cartilage under fluorescent light. I see deposits of crystallized acid." What do these crystals do? The moment you suddenly move into one of those neglected angles, rarely but occasionally, they act like little razor-sharp knives that add to arthrosis and destroy the cartilage even more. Now, you might wonder, what is the reason for this overacidity, this acidosis? Well, that's very simple. Your diet. The animal content in your diet. The meat, dairy products, eggs. All this leads to overacidity. And so does sugar. But apart from your diet, stress and excessive loads are also contributing factors. All these influences are partly absorbed. And it's never about blood. Blood has a narrow band for the acid and the alkaline level. It's not about that. It's about what's happening within your tissues. These are the reasons why discs protrude, rupture, gel-like substance leaks, arthrosis sets in, wear and tear reaches a point where the bone grinds on bone. Those are the reasons. Forget the notion that these things just happen overnight or are just destiny. Or if somebody tells you that humans are only designed to last for 50 years and everything longer simply invites these kind of ailments. We have a totally different take on this. You can do a lot by acknowledging the situation, understand what is happening here, and mounting countermeasures. What can you do for the cartilage in your joints? You have to make sure to use all the angles of motion your joints allow and stretch into those angles. That's why we've developed our exercises which have the additional benefit of giving your cartilage the full nourishment it needs. Plus, your pain disappears because you don't have this excess tension. And the second countermeasure, watch your diet. It should be alkaline with plants, fruit, salad, vegetables. Eat lots of it. Also, drink water and exercise. All that will make you more alkaline and increase the capacity of your fascia to bind water so that your cartilage has an easier time to regenerate and your discs too. All that will get a positive cycle going that makes sure, provided you do this consistently, that you can reverse any arthrosis or avoid slipped discs and again have the chance of a long life without these problems, with full mobility and without any pain. If you've liked this video, it would be great for the benefit of a lot of other people who need this knowledge to share this video with all those people who are interested in this subject, these kind of subjects, or even share it with those who have no interest in this topic, but who might get interested as soon as they learn what they can do by themselves. You know, our mission is to make the world pain-free, and part of it is healthy cartilage and healthy vertebral discs. Please help us in this. And, of course, I would appreciate a thumbs up, any comments that you have on what kind of explanations you would like to have. And if you need videos for expanding your range of motion, please click up here. And for subscribing to our channel, please click down here. Looking forward to seeing you next time.